It's First Nations owned, and they are leading the way in terms of protecting the environment from hazardous materials that probably most people in the province or the city may not know about it.
Just about minimizing how much really needs to go to the landfills like city fills and things like that, and just minimizing our impact.
For more than 20 years, All About Abatement has been delivering reliable abatement and remediation services for asbestos, mold, lead, and other waste and hazardous materials.
Used it for U of A, they were doing an experiment. So we transferred a large amount of rocks for them with it from one container into another.
Their commitment to health and safety is displayed by their Certificate of Recognition, which is a provincially established standard by the occupational health and safety industry. I've lived in Edmonton my whole life and never knew that this was in the city. We're going to go through that today with owner of All About Abatement, Kyle Davidson.
So this is a transfer station where we're able to take in a lot of refuse, a lot of construction debris, concrete that comes in to get ground up and resold for infill. These piles get sorted, right? There's less stuff heading out to the landfills filled with plastics and reusable woods. All the metal is sorted out and sold. We also have a metal recycling smelter at the front. So there's also metal dropped off here regularly. We also send out all these bins out to sites you can store at your yard and your project and use for your sites.
I was really curious about the process itself and how All About Abatement manages to keep this site from growing and growing.
So the loads come in from various construction sites. They get picked and sorted through, just about minimizing how much really needs to go to the landfills like city fills and things like that, and just minimizing our impact on, because construction waste is a huge, filler of these landfills around town and constantly looking for more space. This one fills and then empties as it's picked and sorted through. So it's kind of an ever changing supply of waste that's coming in and through it, rather than just getting bigger and bigger.
And I wanted to know, what exactly do they take out of this heap?
Specifically the wood and metal. Specifically, it's the easiest, larger items that we can get picked through. And if they can sort out as much plastics as possible and stuff, anything that can safely go through our incinerator, which we'll show you next, okay, and can be added to our processes for burning off, mixed in with biohazard waste and other things that we're looking to keep out of the environment.
And as we were walking through the yard, I was just struck by how accessible his site is to people coming off the white mud or outside areas to Edmonton.
Yeah, there's a weigh scale at the front for measuring in certain types of loads, and one back here for general construction debris. Then when we come over here, there's an incinerator utilized in the past for creating biochar, but since we've purchased it, it's going to be changing to just getting rid of as much of this wood that's not usable for anything else as also a waste heat energy source, and mixing into incinerate biohazards. There's many things that can be mixed in. There's a carbon ring filter installed on the exhaust system that captures everything bad from leaving. The incinerator achieves great temperatures, 1700 degrees Celsius, needs a permit to operate. It's a very, very cool system that we were lucky to grab from another company.
There's so much that needs to be managed in our world right now. I was just curious about, what does the future hold and what is the potential?
The other idea is all this medical waste. There's railway ties, hoping that we can deliver, instead of storing these for years and years, a solution that can create green energy and prevent these creosote-soaked items from sitting on land, offering an alternative to just the way things have been historically done, something a little bit new.
And then I had to ask Kyle about on-reserve waste management and how this might help nations that are moving from dumps to waste management systems.
That's essentially what we do here every day, picking through these, making sure this pile never gets too large and reducing it, picking through, sorting, selling. And that's essentially what these nations struggle with as well, is these piles are growing and growing, and there's little to no sorting happening. You need to take up more of your forest that's, or land that could be used for other reasons.
As we wrapped up the discussion about the incinerator, I was really excited to see what else is All About Abatement doing. And then this is where we got to the attic insulation sucker.
Pretty interesting piece of equipment. It's called a vac loader. So it's a HEPA rated, like you do the DOP testing the same as an asbestos negative air or HEPA vacuum, same rigorous testing to make sure the seals are 99.99% effective. And it has hoses that this hopper on the back lifts up. You can connect your asbestos bags right to the bottom of it. It lifts all the way up in the air so you can do it over top of a bin. Oh, yeah. And you can go into an attic and suck everything out at a very extremely high pressure compared to the old way of got to send a bunch of guys up into this hot attic space, that may or not be super strong and fit for big guys to be up there shoveling and scooping with hand scoops. You can send up a guy, a spotter, and have one on the outside and do these large jobs with 3 people rather than having these big teams. And it saves a lot of money with bags as well, and you don't need to use as many plastics because you're filling large containers rather than using hundreds or thousands of those small 6 mil bags. You're using one big bag, and it's just very volume efficient.
And it looks like you can tow it anywhere.
Yeah, it can sit. It's a great length for being able to fit in a driveway and or right in front of a house. It doesn't take up a ton of space. It just pulls behind a pickup. It weighs 12,000 pounds or so, and it's quite a mechanical advantage over just using labor.
I know asbestos in the attic is bad, but why vermiculite?
Vermiculite is a very, very soft and friable material that gets airborne very, very easily, right? You can't, if you have vermiculite in your attic, it's very difficult to even go up and see if you got a roof leak or some of your bathroom venting has come disconnected from a ceiling vent or anything like that without, potentially disturbing the vermiculite that's there. And it's one of the more difficult things to remove for most companies as well. Just as attic hatches are small, it's difficult to get equipment up. And this machine provides actually a significant amount of negative air as well, as it's pulling a lot of air out as it pulls the materials out as well.
It's really important for small and remote communities to understand that even if a wildfire doesn't enter your nation or community, if you're affected by wildfire smoke, that can have an effect and your insulation needs to be replaced.
That smoke can settle right in, but at the same time, even if it's not vermiculite and you have blow-in insulation, the insulations are one of the things that have to go after a big smoke claim. You just can't get rid of that smell. Yeah. And this thing also doesn't really care what it's sucking. If it's the blow-in or the vermiculite, it'll make it all go away.
Oh, so you can do any kind of
insulation. You could do anything. We used it for U of A. They were doing an experiment. So we transferred a large amount of rocks for them with it from one container into another. This is negative air equipment for the most part. There's a D-mob, looks like, that just came off of a job, some generators, showers. These aluminum showers are for everything high risk.
This is all portable and can be taken to any small remote community.
And you don't have to be that short to go in. They pop up to a walk-in height. We hook up our own plumbing. There's drains with micron filters that filter all the water once the guys rinse themselves off, their PPE off, anything that they brought in. If they're decontaminating tools or anything like that, the water goes into this base. It's pumped with an inline pump through a micron filter, and to make sure that our wastewater as well is treated properly.
Kyle and his team do hazardous materials assessments, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about that as we walk through his shop.
We have in-house hygienists that can do bulk sampling for asbestos, for detection of mold with tape lift and air samples. We have a ROHT, registered occupational hygienist technician, Aiden, that works with us, that is certified to do all of this testing. And we have also bulk sampling trained technicians as well for asbestos, so we can do larger amounts of stuff at a time. We can do our own reporting, which is rare nowadays. A lot of companies lost their certification and ability to sign off their own reports.
Oh yeah.
And we're able to do that in-house.
As we continued the site tour, I asked Kyle about pre-planning and what can a company like All About Abatement do in terms of working with Indigenous communities to pre-plan or have a memorandum of understanding, and what is the importance of doing a hazardous materials assessment or incorporating this process into an emergency management plan before a disaster happens?
To do some preventative instead of reactive testing, I feel is never a bad thing, because if there's asbestos, for one, in any communities that were built previous to 1990, there's a very good chance that there's asbestos present in some or all, who knows, of the building materials present. That way, when you do have an event happen, you kind of know, before somebody comes in ripping out millwork that's affected by floods or whatever you have it, that what materials you shouldn't be touching, that could pose a risk to workers on the inside. There's building management, hazardous material reporting that's relatively inexpensive to do. It's bulk sampling of each of the different materials that are there in non-visible locations as best as possible. Some you may not be able to do depending on where it's located in the property. Yeah, once these events already happen, it's good as well to do a little bit of sampling, so you can't do demo nowadays without having sampling done. Even detaching of clean items may be attached to an asbestos wall.
If you're really interested in this topic and hearing more from Kyle, please stand by, because I've added a recording of the audio podcast that we did back in the winter. It's going to be following this message. And I want to thank Kyle at All About Abatement, because they're also sponsoring our Indigenous Emergency Management Coordinator Certificate Program. So you can go to app.hazardscape.com right now and sign up and take the Basic Emergency Management course, which will get you a digital certificate and a paper certificate that you can put on your resume and share with your employer. Now on to our podcast. On so many reserves across Canada, the walls of homes hide silent threats that jeopardize health and well-being. Inside the cramped spaces and behind walls, mold spores drift through the air and grow colonies. Damp basements, poorly vented rooms, and overcrowding create the perfect breeding ground for this invisible fungus, leaving families vulnerable to chronic coughs, asthma attacks, and infections. But mold isn't the only story. A legacy of post-war construction has left reserve homes insulated with asbestos-laden vermiculite. When the insulation is disturbed by renovations, leaks, or everyday wear and tear, it releases microscopic fibers that can lodge deep in the lungs. The result? Scarring, lung disease, and in severe cases, cancer, which has already claimed members of so many First Nations communities. I sat down with First Nations entrepreneur Kyle Davidson, owner of All About Abatement, to discuss these hazards and how First Nations can manage them.
Podcast ever. Should be exciting.
This is your first podcast ever?
Yeah.
You've never...
You're breaking my virginity podcast virginity here. But I usually do pretty good.
Okay. Start there.
Okay.
Welcome to the Hazardscape podcast, where we discuss Indigenous emergency management as our small contribution to enhancing Indigenous community public safety in our efforts to reconcile the relationship between the Crown and all nations.
All About Abatement is also Indigenous owned. I'm
Right.
a status Indian myself.
Yeah. Where from?
Okanagan.
We're from Okanagan.
Okanagan, yeah. I started in abatement 2006. It's one of the only things I know how to do. In 2018, I decided to open my own company and get All About Abatement off the ground, servicing most of Western Canada, Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan. We go up north to Yukon, Northwest Territories as well. We've done a job recently in Quebec. We're starting to move across the country. It's federally regulated, or federally.
It's like a regulated. it's a very heavily regulated sector, like
but
abatement.
It's registered across the country now, so we can kind of go where the work is, which is nice.
Oh, like you've got some type of like accreditation or certification that says you can work.
Yeah, just provincially, we can go wherever as long as we fit within the
Oh,
regulations
okay.
of that province. But luckily for us, Alberta has some of the most stringent. If we take those procedures with us, we can
Yeah.
follow in line with that province that we're working in.
Right.
It's nice.
Okay. So you said 2016,
2018.
2018. What were you doing before 2018?
Previously to 2018, I started my career in BC, working for, at that time, the largest abatement company in Canada. And I stayed there till 2015 and opened at that time a large another abatement company for a large restoration company. And I did that for 3 years and eventually wanted to take the road myself and felt that I had a team that would follow me, that we could provide just as good or a better service on our own.
Yeah. Okay. So 2018, you get into abatement. So go into a little bit like what does abatement even mean?
Abatement is the safe removal of something hazardous.
Okay.
So our bread and butter is asbestos, but we also do mold, lead, handful of other things, mercury,
Yeah.
PCBs.
Okay.
Most older buildings have something there for us to do.
Yeah. So anything hazardous, you're kind of coming in, setting up the environment to make it safe to remediate it or take it out and
Yeah.
dispose of it.
Yeah, our job starts with safe containment of the hazardous material,
Okay.
and then removal of whatever's there with post clearances. And by the time we're done, the hazard is gone, and rebuild contractors can start.
Doing their thing and putting all like kind of new regulated better building materials in there, stuff like that. Getting rid of all the crap.
Putting everything back the way it should have been.
Yeah. So okay, that's interesting because like how there's a lot of toxic shit in our buildings and homes, right?
There is.
Like it's like
And the list is ever evolving.
yeah, I bet, eh?
Yeah.
And so what is it? And I know like for this one, we kind of want to focus on First Nations because because I know you do work with First Nations.
We do, yeah.
Right. And I kind of like to focus on like on reserve kind of areas, especially related to emergency management. So particularly making sure that post disaster during a recovery, that homes are properly, dealt with, restored following fire, flood, things like that. Because a lot of the on reserve homes were kind of built, I think, like that massive building. There's like in the 80s, a huge move to build a lot of homes.
Yeah.
And I know like there's a lot of asbestos
There is.
in them, right?
Yeah. And all the way up until 1990.
Yeah.
For homes in that drywall joint compound, all the way up to the 1990. So, Mark.
So but what is at the end of the day, because like, I mean, my home has asbestos.
Mm-hmm.
We were wanting to remodel like our kid's bedroom and it's got the popcorn ceiling.
Yeah.
And I started scraping away.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was that triggered me to like I know what it was. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this because I was getting shit everywhere. Probably breathed in.
Job.
Yeah, probably breathed in something. Who knows? But started researching like, what's a better way to remove popcorn ceiling? And that led me down to like, did you get it tested for asbestos? And we did get it tested, and there is asbestos. So I was like, oh frick.
There you go.
And I just left it alone. Like we haven't touched it because that's kind of the advice, and we didn't encapsulate it or anything.
Yeah.
But I remember like as a kid, like in our older house when I was growing up, there was a popcorn ceiling. I would stick tacks and shit in it to like hang up a poster on the roof, whatever. That's not good.
No.
So that's the kind of stuff that you deal with so if a house is flooded and the popcorn ceiling gets a ton of moisture, or the drywall compound, like you're saying, like you remove all that stuff.
There'd be a water mapping done by the restoration contractor. Whatever has been wet for too long or they identify for removal, our team isolates that area and removes it. It's funny you say that when you were a kid, you bumped into it. now that I've been doing this for 20 years, I remember things too. Like I used to work at a mill on a cleanup crew when I was in high school, and they had us jackhammering out the inside of kilns, and I always wonder, did they get this stuff checked?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So,
No, probably
yeah,
not.
probably not. Yeah. Yeah.
Probably not. It's there's a lot of stuff. And I mean, so why I kind of like to again discuss this with First Nations is because they don't have a lot of very remote reserves because they can't get their houses insured. They don't have a lot of experience with I don't want to call it the insurance process,
Yeah.
but it's kind of that process of if a house is damaged, it's kind of like they'll just bring in whatever carpenter is around or who they've got on the housing team and
Cut it out.
cut it out and fix it and get people back in.
Yeah.
But they're not doing the work of testing.
No.
Right?
There's a real educational gap. Even around these big cities, we see and hear about it or get involved in a cleanup that nobody did the proper checks before the project began, and now there's a contaminated building that needs cleaned, and that just adds costs and bad publicity to these buildings, especially if it's a public building or a school and maintenance didn't do their due diligence. It can be nasty.
Yeah.
It can be nasty.
Yeah. And I'm just going to make sure. I want to do one thing. I should have this on. I just want to make sure that the audio's coming through. Okay. Test. Okay. So it's good. Let's just kind of like paint a scenario here, right? So let's say a First Nation has a localized flood event.
Yeah.
And let's just say, for example, 20 houses get flooded.
Mm-hmm.
And, up to let's put it in the summertime. So it's like 30 degrees out.
Yeah.
10 houses are flooded. Half of them have some sort of finishing to the basement. The other ones don't.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say we get like 2 to 3 feet of water, mixture of sewer backup and some overland flooding that came through the basement windows because they don't have window wells.
Yep.
Or the windows were open. Mm-hmm. So you've got a mixture of sewer backup and that. And the homeowner was evacuated for in total 3 weeks, right, in 30-degree weather.
Yeah.
What would be kind of your immediate concerns?
Mold, for
Mold.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, when we first go in, we've been in lots of environments like that that have had bad, catastrophic fire or water events, and buildings have been left for weeks or months unattended, and the mold is inches thick, right? So that's your first concern is you do have to be concerned about the asbestos portion and all that as well.
Yeah.
But the immediate hazard in a building like that is the mold. The mold colonies. I've taken some amazing photos over the years of the colors that they get and how they look when they're left alone.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty cool, but it's also very dangerous. Like you don't want to walk in and disturb mold colonies this size and go in without your proper PPE and just try to self-perform anything after a loss of that severity.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's an interesting one. So when you say disturb a mold colony, what exactly, kind of take us through that?
Just your day-to-day life can really disturb an active mold growth.
Yeah.
You have mold growing around your
You can look if you want.
And, just in other parts around your house that you walk past all the time that you don't really think about, you throw your towel against, and any, even air movement can blow spores off of this mold growth. And once it's airborne, all it needs to do is land in another suitable place for mold growth, and you have twice the problems you originally started with. And if you're a person who's, has issues with your respiratory system, or you're generally unwell, or you have older people or kids in the house, you're also risking people's health as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in that, going back to that scenario, because there's a high likelihood that a lot of those homes had pre-existing mold issues.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is true, but this is what I was told by some Dene people up in Northwest Territories, Fort Smith area.
Yeah.
is because they do like a lot of cooking at home where they boil a lot of their food or the meat. That creates like a very humid environment. And that's why they've got some mold issues, because just culturally, that's how they cook.
Yep.
And then two, a lot of the houses that were built were not built well in terms of ventilation.
Yeah.
And so that combination of things causes a lot of humidity and mold to grow.
It's true.
Then when you throw, even like a couple feet of water in a basement in a house that's at like sitting around 25, 30 degrees over the summer for a couple of weeks, that can, like, how much mold growth might you see in that like 2-week period? Would you see a lot?
Yeah. Like
you
I've
would,
seen, for example, like after these Fort McMurray wildfires years ago, like it was the fire that, that obviously evacuated the town, but there was flooding soon after, right? With a bunch of power down, some pumps not working.
Yeah.
So water turned into a quick problem, like a real problem. And, good to go?
Yeah. Keep on.
And, we were, even places that didn't get 2 or 3 feet of water in the basement, these places were completely collapsed in a month. Like cabinetry couldn't stay together anymore. The mold was completely to the ceiling. Like it's an inch thick on the walls.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. Like you walk into a month after a water loss, in, like you're saying, with perfect temperatures, like extreme heats, lots of water, mold growth happening. It really takes off. It takes off fast. Like it's covering the couches with an inch thick. The wood is completely deteriorating. The walls are not standing up. They're caving in like something hit them, but it's just everything's falling down.
Wow.
So it really takes off fast. The mold really breaks down rapidly.
Yeah. So, okay. So even in that scenario where there's just been a little bit of water and things like that, like that's like, and I would call that scenario that I just went through normal in the sense of that kind of thing. Like I remember being in like High River where houses were flooded like half, like to the main floor from the basement, and they sat like that for a month.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of this really quick story.
Yeah.
If it's okay.
Yeah.
So the what happened when in High River? So when I was manager for the disaster recovery program for Alberta, they had a firm that was providing contracted services to do all the damage assessment and all this. And it literally said in the government policy at the time that pre-existing mold like would not be covered under the financial assistance for abatement in a big flood. And that mold, essentially the idea at the time, this is only in 2013, that mold wasn't a risk, right? Enough of a risk to warrant funding to have it removed. And I mean, me being kind of like, like a new manager in the area at that time, I was kind of like, that doesn't jive with me. And there was always this like debate with the policyholders about should it be eligible or not.
Yeah.
But then the town of High River did the smartest thing ever. They invited Mike Holmes to come and talk at the I think it was at the rodeo. It's a rodeo stadium. And the first like 5 sentences out of his mouth was, do not go back into your homes. They are going to be unsafe, riddled with mold. And I was standing off to the side listening to this, and I just made a phone call to them. My boss of the government said at the time, and I said, mold is now eligible.
Wow.
Like, we have to make it eligible, because the government was going to do whatever they could to try and fiddle around that cost.
Yeah.
And as soon as Mike Holmes said that, and like 6,000, whatever, how many was there? Well, probably not 6,000, but like 1,000. There was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
Heard that there was no way it was going to go down. So I think, it's super important that people understand the severity of the risk of mold.
Yeah, it's
That's one
really
thing.
overlooked. Like in our industry, everybody cares about asbestos, right?
Yeah.
You want to take care of asbestos properly, but mold delivers, some bad hazards as well. And but there are some jurisdictions that take it more seriously than others. Like there's a generic document for mold remediation in Canada called Best Practices Mold at the Worksite. And that pretty much governs mold throughout Canada. Like probably most remediation contractors are familiar with this document. But in BC, now, and it's funny you say around 2013, but there's a document now that you need, regardless of where you're working, called a Notice of Project for Asbestos Removal.
Oh, yeah.
And in BC, you need so it's an NOPA for asbestos, and it's an NOPM for mold. So they're also tracking mold removal.
Yeah.
So, and that's great because, you know, we don't need to tell in Alberta anybody what we're doing or how we're doing it when it comes to mold. It's just being assumed it's being handled correctly, right?
Yeah.
And that your professional is doing his job. But in BC, they're making it a WCB coverable item, right?
Okay.
That the officers work safe that's inspecting these sites is also being told when there's just mold on the work site, which is kind of neat because I don't know of another jurisdiction in Canada that does that.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was in BC over the summer helping a friend like dispose of a lot of stuff from their parents' house because they were the parents, one had passed away and the other one was aging and can't live there anymore. And we took a bunch of stuff to the dump. It was kind of like an eco center in Edmonton here, but it was in BC. And the rules there around, asbestos and stuff like that, very different than my experience here in Alberta. Like, I can't remember what the signage was, but it was something along the lines of like all drywall, this type of material had to be reported at the gate. And they kind of like did a bit of an interview to find out if it had been tested.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the test results, you can't leave it.
Yeah.
Whereas in Edmonton here, I could take drywall to the eco station and drop it off right away. But it's stricter there.
Yeah, we're like the Wild West over here. Like all the drywall that's abated with asbestos in it in BC actually has to come back here to Alberta, or that's how it was when I was there. They
Really?
wouldn't take it.
Oh, really?
Take it there at all. It was shipped back here to Alberta.
Well, okay. I could see that because this was on Vancouver Island. So it's like, where on that island is there space to like manage all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like I could see Alberta being a base for that because we've got a lot of space. But that's interesting. So so that's mold, which is prevalent through First Nations. We know that it's a big issue. And if it doesn't get taken care of, evacuations, what is it? Here's the thing, like, let's just say a home gets evacuated for a month and it's got some mold issues already and it's summertime. And sure, you would think, okay, no one's in the house. There isn't really anything going on. Having someone out of the house that long, does that like could that make things worse? Like,
I would think so. You always hear that you leave your house empty and kind of nobody in it and it kind of deteriorates over time. I think that, you know, having nobody in the home with an active mold problem would accentuate that problem. So just as, you know, the little bit of mindless upkeep that you actually give the mold, like some people trying to spray mold or bleach on the mold, or just trying to do little home remedies, you know, all that would stop. So it would be able to thrive. And I'm not exactly sure, but seems to me like it would help it.
Yeah, it always kind of like goes through my head, right? Because you've got people that evacuate for like a month out of their house due to wildfire. And
then they're not covered for pre-existing mold. Who knows what was there and what's not.
Exactly. Yeah. And as people get more educated with evacuation procedures, you know, they're not, you know, like they are closing the windows. They are like sealing up the house.
Yeah.
And so now you've just got this fairly stagnant, heated environment over the summer.
Yeah.
And if there is a rainfall and the humidity comes up, like I would just think not having the bathroom fans running
or
a little bit.
Generic HVAC's usually off in emergency situations too,
yeah.
Right? So, and that's no air filtration anymore. The mold is not being picked up. At any interval. Yeah.
So I think, this is like, it's a big issue. And again, where I look at it coming at it from like post-disaster on reserve, I know because it's like this in a lot of nations, like the first priority is just to get people home. And I've put this out there. I won't mention the name, but there is a organization that like provides cleaning kits for after evacuation, for floods, after floods and wildfires.
Yeah.
And I know that it gives people like a false sense of security.
Yeah. We've heard of these over the years as well.
Yeah, in terms of like, they're not safe. They're not good, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, educating First Nations on the fact that, one, do not accept these cleaning kits, thinking that that's going to fix your problem, and don't accept them because you can get organizations like Indigenous Services Canada saying, well, did you accept these cleaning kits? Those were provided. We've provided funding to this organization to purchase them. They've given you these cleaning kits. So why are you coming to us for money for restoration?
Yeah.
And for me, the worry is always that's what's going to happen. That's what happens a lot of times.
Yeah, we've heard of these things, and they're just old saying, lipstick on a pig. Like they're making a situation kind of you could get away with maybe passing, right? Like in a sense, like the problems kind of gone or hidden, but like mold is there from something. There's an underlying cause, right? These kits don't fix the problem behind your wall, right? They don't stop a leaking pipe, right? Like a proper remediation of removal of that drywall to see what's behind, like what's going on with the envelope of this structure, right? Why is the mold here? Or is there no bathroom fan installed, right? Or is there something that's creating this climate inside of your home that mold is able to thrive, right? They're just making the air clean. Like I've heard of fogging kits that fog the air so you could run an air test and pass. So what, right? Like the mold came from somewhere. It's not growing in the air. It's growing on something in the house.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of null and void. Like, yeah, if you need to pass a test, but why, right? You're not there to just pass one test. You're there to make sure the problem's not there tomorrow.
Yeah. What about lead? That's an interesting one. Like, where do you find lead in a house?
Yeah.
These days.
So lead is around, usually you hear about in older lead paints, right?
Yeah.
There's sheeting products for roofing vents, stuff like that. But usually when we run into it, it's a lead painted siding or lead paint on an interior wall of really old homes, right? But lead is pretty underlooked, I'll call it, in Alberta. And again, in BC, it's much better regulated. So they actually make sure that we know what we're doing when you go do it. It's nice. I like to send my Alberta crew over to BC sometimes to see how you should do stuff properly because there's somebody over your shoulder watching.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't come up a lot in Alberta, but it is a serious problem. Mold is pretty much regulated for what's an acceptable mold limit across Canada, except for a few outlying jurisdictions still allow for quite a bit to be inside of lead paint and stuff, for example. But it's I think lead is due to get more stringent regulation in Alberta and beyond.
Okay. So what if I'm like as a homeowner, what conditions of my home should I be, like year it was built, like what's some of the is there any kind of common
for most of the homes that get a good thorough hazard assessment report done, hazardous material report generated, are pre-1990 homes, like 1991.
You guys do those? Do you do those assessments?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
We do. There's quite a few organizations around that can bulk sample, air test. We're one of those. But it's usually the spur point is around 1990, where if there's reno work planned or demolition work planned, that those reports are required.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Required by like the municipality, probably through their permitting.
Yep. You can't get a demo permit without your bulk, hazardous material bulk report, right? Showing that you have tested for those parameters.
Okay.
Right? For lead, for asbestos, or if there's PCB ballasts, they can be really thorough. And the more thorough they are, the better job you're going to do. You're not going to accidentally dispose of of something in a landfill that's not ready for it or
Right.
prepared.
What's a PCB ballast?
So it's like a older light, like your fluorescent lights.
Oh,
up
okay.
here, that black ballast that's in behind that's powering the
Oh,
control of
off.
the electric.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so even those, they're really easy to identify. It says no PCBs on them if there's none. So those are those don't
Really?
really need any testing. It's a quick read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so you do hazardous material assessments for residential homes.
Yes.
And so it's like, I mean, basically so that's good to know, because if I'm looking, like working with a First Nation,
Mm-hmm.
that's something I would make part of my community risk assessment.
Yeah.
Would be every house gets a hazardous materials assessment
Yeah.
done for each one,
Yeah.
as a way to, one, prioritize within the housing department
Yeah.
what needs attention.
Yeah.
And then two, if there is a disaster and post recovery,
And you have an inventory.
then we've got an inventory pre-done of the hazards.
And for example, like this isn't something that would shock the governments to do, because in Saskatchewan, for one, if you have a public accessible building, you must have an inventory done of your asbestos containing materials. And every room of some of these bigger buildings has to have, behind the door, there's like a tag, right?
Yeah.
It says the walls, the ceilings, the floors. There's a handful of different criterias, and they says if they have asbestos in them or not. So if there's emergency situations, they know, like these are
okay,
already
yeah.
tested. Very awesome system.
Yeah.
I did a job at University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon. That's the first time I saw that, and I was like, this should be everywhere. 'Cause
Absolutely.
you just know it's already done. So
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Okay, that's good. Because I'm always kind of looking for those little, I'll call them add-ons to the larger risk assessment. Because a lot of communities, they're very, okay, no brainer, get a flood assessment, get a wildfire risk assessment, get even like a egress assessment, right?
Yeah.
They're looking at all these natural hazards. And I think a lot of the times, like the hazardous materials assessment, even I would say on reserve around a lot of the buildings, like looking for tipped over tanks of fuel or oil, like diesel, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that, I don't know if that's in your
That's
scope.
a little out of our scope.
That's a lot out of your
The,
scope.
Yeah, like that phase 3 soil testing and stuff like that. That'd be different companies.
Yeah. But as far as the houses go and the nation buildings,
Yeah.
like, would you also include, like, say, a public works building as a commercial one, or is that within a different scope?
No, we do. Like, we have a wide array of clients ourselves. We're one of the only abatement companies in Alberta that actually employ hygienists. So a lot of people think you can't, right?
Yeah.
But you can. Like, there's strict codes to follow, right? We can't just because we employ hygienists do whatever we want. Like, the same high standards must be kept.
Yeah.
So we don't always use our own hygienists on every job, but we do have them in house.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
and we do public works. We work actually with the federal government directly as well for some airport stuff. And, a wide variety.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of, we talked about, touched a little bit on asbestos, mold, lead. Like, what other kind of areas are you concerned with in houses?
We also service the restoration market. Is probably our largest market, working with restoration companies.
Right.
So we don't do restorations ourselves, but we do supply like the backbone labor into a lot of the companies' crews around town, which is very fortunate to do so. And we cross-train our abatement employees with IICRC training, so that we just have a higher quality labor pool ready for these companies that have catastrophic losses happen.
Yeah.
And they need a higher caliber skilled labor, still general labor, but guys that I've had for years and have been around restoration type projects for a decade or more.
Okay. So yeah, you kind of bring in that, it's that abatement expertise, and probably it's the equipment specialized equipment set up?
We don't hold any restoration equipment ourselves, but
No.
the abatement guys are, they're very good at keeping things clean, because when
Yeah.
you've done an asbestos abatement, it must be perfectly clean for
Yeah.
all the post sampling. So that's very handy for these guys on fire claims, water claims and stuff, that also everything needs to be kept really clean and very isolated, because containments are still important. Lots of times if it's clean or dirty, right, for stopping cross-contamination of soot and stuff, and smoke, odors, things like that as well.
Yeah, that's a big thing I learned about, like with some of these wildfire restorations, was just it's not even so much. Well, it is. Like if you have fire smoke smell in your house, it's because it's contaminated.
Mhm.
It's not just, it's just not it is leftover particles, but it's still considered contaminated to a level.
Yeah,
right.
You on your work boots, you go stomping through one really bad fire claim. Boots aren't clean, and you head over to somebody's house that's not too bad, and don't take off your boots and walk them in. You could think that maybe they have smoke damage as well, but it's your boots that you're wearing around, right?
Oh,
Something
yeah.
like that. So cross contamination is important for abatement, but it's also important for those kind of applications as well.
Yeah, I see that a lot. Like, I don't know what kind of training they do with wildfire, like on reserve and structural, but I know, like, because the fire service is on reserve, a lot of them are not very sophisticated.
Yeah.
Yeah, firefighters will just chuck all their gear in the back of their truck, right, or their trunk of their car, and that's where it sits until the next one.
Yep.
Or they'll even just wear it home and drop it all off at the front entrance, and it's like those things are so contaminated, especially if it's a house fire.
Yeah, if they went and knocked a door in or hit a wall and it had asbestos or something on it, then they go drop that suit off at home. That's a cross contamination of where their wife and kids are.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, it and from my view, like having dealt with Indigenous Services Canada on this kind of stuff and the federal government for a very long, like it'll be going on 16 years now. Even at the provincial government level, there is kind of like zero awareness within the emergency management side of these organizations. Like Indigenous Services Canada staff are not going to nations and saying, hey, you've been evacuated for a month. We need to do a hazardous material assessment on your home before you re-enter.
Yeah.
They're even working with like First Nations Inuit Health Branch people. Those health people aren't even asking for that kind of data.
Yeah, crazy.
And I'm just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Right? It just boggles my mind that the government, I'm trying to think if it's like, I don't know if it's like incompetence or cluelessness, if they're the same thing, but they're just not
focused on different things.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because I've seen the government, Indigenous Services Canada, be totally fine with sending families back to homes where all living room walls are covered in mold.
That's terrible.
Like, what in the hell? And then you have, when I worked with some of these people that have lived in those environments, on reserve, and it's like, they come to work and they're like, oh, I'm sick again. Or I gotta go home early because I have a headache. And I know it's not because they're sick from a cold. They're living in a moldy environment.
For sure.
And their kids are always sick, and their kids' noses are always running, and they're always feeling like shit, and they're always tired.
Yeah.
That, I think, that is the mold.
That's that constant exposure to the mold's mycotoxins.
Yeah. Like I've seen, like, I know you have, I've seen horrific photos of homes that are just engulfed by mold.
Yeah.
And it's still to the point where, I'll talk to families and they're like, well, it's that or we live outside in a tent, and they prefer to go back to the home.
Yeah.
And they still complain of illness, and they wonder why the health centers and the nursing stations always have people, like, why they're always busy with people being sick.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, nobody talks about it. Like nobody, like there's nothing done by the government to investigate these things.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's like it's at the point now where it's like I don't think it's any different than any other type of humanitarian crisis that we would hear about in like another continent,
Nope.
right?
And our events have been fairly common. Every year there's been some fairly bad catastrophic things happening across Canada.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a serious issue that how they're dealing with these losses in real time.
Yeah, and like or not even dealing with it like it's like pulling
Pushing them by.
teeth. Yeah, it's like pulling teeth
I bet.
to get the funding to remediate and abate these homes.
Imagine.
Yeah, and it is a big issue, and I think too, like, you know, and these are First Nations, like even non-Indigenous, like High River, Calgary, like it was a huge fight to get the insurance companies involved
Yeah.
with the claims in High River and Calgary
Yeah.
because they didn't want to take on the losses.
Yeah.
But the provincial government, to their credit, like basically, I think, however they did it, strong armed or something, had some meetings, at least got the insurance companies to take on anything that was above the main floor. So the government dealt with everything at the basement level to main floor.
Yeah.
Insurance went above that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it was it was a little hairy there because insurance companies were basically not even sending in adjusters.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's months till these things happen. We think we're moving relatively quick after these cats happen, and it's like 3 months down the road, and we have our phone ringing. Are we ready to go?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you said you did a job in Quebec. Like you're able to kind of like
yeah,
go anywhere?
yeah, just with the way the company's federally regulated,
Yeah.
so registered, we get to enjoy that courtesy of moving across the country freely.
Yeah.
We have obviously our lawyers and accountants make sure to keep us compliant wherever we work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a neat way to operate. It's fairly new to all About Abatement to have that type of registration done.
Yeah.
We did it after some of the large fire losses a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Right, just because they were in provinces that we weren't, and just to be able to go if the phone does call. So we just keep it registered like that.
Right.
The Quebec one was a call to work at a port, which was kind of neat for a mold.
Oh, yeah.
As well. So
Okay.
working at a port and water and mold, and so that was neat.
Seawater.
Yeah,
Seawater mold.
supporting another company that does emergency type work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would kind of like, for you in this industry at this point, like what are you thinking like the next decade is going to look like in terms of just trying to like create healthier communities? Like, is it just going to be kind of like going down the same path, clean up as much as possible?
I've seen a lot of missions with positive missions towards these reserves, like Mr. Knight, Stan Knight with
Oh,
the
yeah.
inspector in a box,
Yeah.
which is really neat, kind of pushing awareness of mold in the home and a handful of other things.
Yeah.
And some other companies as well. Like I think it's getting talked about more,
Yeah.
especially mold. Everybody always tells me, well, aren't you worried that asbestos is going to be gone in the next 10 years? And then 10 years goes by and I'm still removing more asbestos than I did the past 10 years. So
Yeah.
not too worried about that. It's kind of been the same for a while.
Yeah.
But there's kind of new players showing up where occupational health and safety divisions are checking for airborne silica and silica in general in materials.
Okay.
So silica and asbestos are relatively similar.
What is
So
silica coming from? Like, what is are they?
silica is just in like the other types of building materials, like
Oh,
with concretes and aggregates and like
okay.
the other stuff we're not really checking for in drywall, right? So
Yeah.
so it's relatively still new to us, but we have had officers show up on a just interior demo site. There wasn't abatement there to do silica testing in the air
Really?
to see if we needed to implement more like wetting procedures and stuff like that to keep the dust out of the air. So
Right.
I just have a funny feeling that might be next on the regulatory kind of list is silica.
Okay. So that's one to kind of watch out for.
Yeah.
in terms of that movement. And yeah, like what kind of so what kind of advice would you give? Like, let's just say I'm like a housing manager on a reserve. Like, if they called you up and said, "Okay, Kyle, I heard you on this podcast. We've not done anything in our community to deal with any sort of hazardous material around the houses and nation buildings."
Yeah.
Where would you start with them? Like the assessment piece?
Yeah, I would just ask them, how's their nation doing with complaints on mold? That'd be the best starting point,
Oh
because
yeah.
that would kind of identify maybe gaps in building practices and maintenance practices as well,
Yeah.
right? So if they're struggling with mold in their homes, and lots of them are, maybe they have same style roof that's in, or same guy did their ducting to their bathroom fans, didn't vent them outside, and they're all vented into the attic, right? I think it's typically a good starting point, and those, just a simple, cheap air test inside these homes can give a quick blink of time of, is there something strange happening, right? In comparison to some controlled outdoor samples, is there elevated mold inside of these homes? I hear about outrageous costing that nations get charged for these kind of tests and cleans and stuff. And this is a really inexpensive thing to run. These cassettes are cheap. It's the time of one guy to set up some pumps, walk around, and that would give these housing managers a really good snapshot of, how is their nation's indoor air quality really doing?
Would you do so let's say, because this is what we did. So let's say you've got like 1,000 houses on reserve, or that's pretty big. Like, let's just go with 500. You got 500 homes.
Yep.
Would you would want to test every single home, or would you do a sample and then kind of see what that draws, and then
The wait times for like the lab analysis portion of the sample is pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
You could start doing these samples, but as you're going every day sending these off to a lab, and you'd have an ongoing story as you went. Like,
Right,
this
okay.
data, you'd know it the next day or the next couple days, depending on how remote your nation is.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be, if every single house you went in has a problem, you wouldn't need to do every single house.
Yeah.
Or if you have all the same street was all built at the same time, they've all been really good, maybe you'll stop sampling that street and not getting the complaints, and jump over to an older neighborhood or another neighborhood that's catching more complaints.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those big, multi-residential, like lots of hundreds of homes, are different than every other job we do there. They kind of are a personal experience.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that if you went, just from my experience, I know if you went on reserve and there was like 100 houses and you did 50, if the other 50 didn't get their house done, it wouldn't go over. Yeah, it would be about where's my report.
Yeah.
So you'd have, but I do think in that case, having them all done for that record would be extremely valuable.
Yeah, I think so too.
And that's something you can store in kind of like your asset management system. And then if there is something wrong, you could even tell like carpenters and plumbers, like, okay, this is the damage. This is what the house was rated at or whatever. Maybe it's not a great idea to go in there and start playing around with this. Let's call someone with some PPE, personal protective equipment, stuff like that.
Yep.
Or have it on site for them to put on. Because I would imagine a lot of plumbers and carpenters go into a home just with nothing other than their work clothes on.
For sure. And for these, everybody's worried about, well, they don't want to go in and cause damage, and do invasive kind of testing. And there's so many ways to do non-invasive testing nowadays, like with these FLIR cameras and stuff like that can see through walls when we can't, and pick up cold spots and wet spots. And I think there's so much technology nowadays that isn't being used that they could use on reserve themselves, have FLIR training programs for their own inspectors, and make it a quarterly walk around of inspecting these homes themselves. That would identify half these problems that we're seeing through these walls. So, and that's a couple $1,000 expense on some FLIR cameras and a training to show them how to use them.
Yeah, and often wonder too, like for some families or homeowners, you know, kind of what is there any shame that exists around this, which creates like a barrier for them wanting to have the house tested? Like, I think it's good for people to know that, if your house has mold, it has nothing to do with the, how you're maintaining the home. It's like you said before, there's probably some unseen issue that's going on that
Yeah.
you can't necessarily maintain because you can't access it or can't see it or don't have the process to uncover it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like for me, if there's one message I could tell people, it's like, if you have mold or anything like this in your home, like, yeah, you've got to report it to your nation. But if the nation isn't doing anything, then, where can those people go to kind of deal with it on their own?
Yeah.
I don't know what options they have. It's kind of a tricky situation, but there shouldn't be any shame around speaking up about these things.
Yeah. And lots of people don't like people coming into their homes and seeing something unrelated that, they have shame or they're embarrassed about, but, the health of their family is more important.
Yeah. So, like, there's no judgment.
No. We've been in homes that, they're less than ideal, you can say, but there's no judgment here. We're there to help get you guys back to a normal running day.
Yeah. So what is there anything we haven't talked or brought up that you think is important for people to kind of know about this process?
I think this was pretty diverse chat.
Yeah.
We managed to pull off here, but I just think, like you said that, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Like, if you have a problem and you're not talking about it, nobody knows you have a problem.
Yeah.
Right, inside these homes, like, everybody's like, well, I saw this video on YouTube and I'll go get some Lysol and I'll spray it on the wall and I'll kill this mold myself, right? And then you don't see this on the front side of the drywall, but in the meantime, it's taken off 4 feet up or straight up into your ceiling now, and it's behind these walls. The front side of your drywall is painted. It's harder for mold to travel, but on the back side, it's paper. If it's wet and it's dark, right? It could be humid depending on your own ventilation, but it can travel. You spray the front with bleach, who cares? The mold is not just on the front. It usually comes from something on the back, and it's still moving just fine on the backside.
Yeah. Wow.
But you can't see that without doing some invasive tests, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I like what you said about that is, it doesn't travel where you can see it, but if it is getting to the point where you can see it, it's probably really bad in behind.
Really bad. Usually you can see some damage at the bottom of these walls by baseboards and stuff. Then we cut that wall 2 feet, and it's actually a foot high or more, and traveling just fine, well beyond what you saw on the painted side.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
really
incredible.
Moves, so
yeah. Where can people, like, what is your website?
Ours is nice and easy. It's all-about.ca. But we're really active on LinkedIn. If you follow All About Abatement on LinkedIn, it's probably our best one. We're trying to catch up on the social media storm that's life nowadays.
It is, yeah.
But
you're on LinkedIn, you got website.
Yeah.
They can get a hold of you, your team. You're based out of Edmonton.
Yeah, based out of Edmonton. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go do some video around your shop and get some B-roll and stuff and add to this.
That'd be awesome. And I'll get that video from Skyline.
We'll do some drone. And just reach out if you're a housing manager listening on reserve, or even a capital projects person or infrastructure, health director, education director that is curious about the state of your airspace within your structures. Reach out to Kyle and his team, and
you can send an email to info@all-about.ca. Need to hyphen between all-about.ca. And we'll get somebody likely smarter than me to reach out back to you and help you with your problem.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, thanks for providing some education to us, and we'll stay. We're gonna do this again. So that's awesome. All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks for joining us at Hazardscape. You can subscribe to our YouTube and find our ad-free training videos by becoming a supporter on Patreon with a network of other Indigenous peoples looking to make their communities safer. And remember, know your hazardscape and be prepared.